In this video, we're going to be taking a look at creating details and working with schedules along with a few other tools. So let's start a brand new drawing. And when we start a brand new drawing here, we're going to work with the architectural template. It just keeps things a little bit cleaner. We can go ahead and pick OK. And now very quickly, I'm going to draw some walls and a floor, and then I'll be able to show you how to use details for drafting. So we'll go over to the wall tool. We've done this before. We're going to change the height here at the top left to level 2, and then we're going to use here the wall called exterior brick on metal stud, and we'll change the metal stud to a wood stud and change the dimension for it. So let's go ahead and click on exterior brick on metal stud. At this point, when we pick edit type just below that, we can pick duplicate to create our own. So let's go ahead and pick duplicate, and we'll get rid of the metal stud and then number 2. So the name of it will be exterior brick on wood stud. And we'll go ahead and pick OK. I just wanted to show you here that we copied or we created a new duplicate of that existing metal stud structure. We can now pick the edit button here next to structure and change the metal stud to wood. So here where it says material, we'll click on it and click on that little icon with 3 little dots. And I'm just going to scroll down and use this wood here. It's called wood stained. And under the appearance, you can see that it's used for several different types of wood material. Let's go ahead and use this wood stained and pick OK. That's not as important as right now as the details like the thickness. For instance, if you don't want to use a 3-inch airspace, which I don't, I'm going to go ahead and change that to 1 inch. I'm just going to change the 3 to 1. And then also for the wood here structure, we don't want 6 inches, right? We want 5.5. So we can type in 5.5 and make sure that you have the inches. I just replaced the 6 with 5.5, but look what happens when I click in one of the other cells here. It goes to 5.5. So I changed the material to wood, and I changed the airspace to 1 inch, and the thickness for my wood stud is 5.5. Let's go ahead and pick OK, and pick OK again. I'm ready to draw my walls, so just for this example, I'm just going to draw a small one. It doesn't have to be the same for yours. I'm just going to click, pull my mouse over and click down and click over and click, and then up here and click, so that you have these 4 walls. And then you can use your escape key once you've created this 4 walls, or you can pick this modify button at the top left, which cancels you completely out of the command. Now we have these 4 walls. Let's go ahead and create a floor. This is real basic because I want to be able to create a section and show you how to add details. So we can go up to floor and pick architectural, and since we know that the floor is going to be underneath the walls, we're going to go ahead up in this draw panel and click on rectangle. I'll click the top left corner and all the way down to the bottom right corner. I just want it to be underneath the wall here in a rectangle. And also, in order for us to use the tools that I'm going to work with you here with, we're going to make the floor a 10-inch instead of a 12-inch, so that we can have the 9.25 inch 2x10 joist and the 3/4 of an inch subfloor plywood. So again, we're going to pick for the floor generic 12-inch, we'll pick edit type, we'll pick duplicate, we're going to change this generic 12-inch to generic 10-inch. That's just the name of it, because it could actually be wood joist floor system or something like that. Generic 10-inch, pick OK. And then this is where we can go into the structure and pick edit. And right here, I'm going to change the thickness from 1 foot to 10 inch. Make sure in Revit you type in the inches. So you don't want a 10-foot floor. So 10 inches here for the thickness. I'm going to go ahead and pick OK and OK again. Now that we have our sketch drawn, we want to make sure that we pick the green check mark to get out of this sketch mode. We should have a floor here now, and you can see that it's highlighted in blue. When I click in space, it'll bring me back to the ribbon at the top. I'm going to go to the View tab at the top so that I can create a section. You can go ahead and pick the section mark and then pick here at the far left over that wall and click again, so you have a small wall section. You could make it a building section and then crop it, or you can just make it a wall section. You should see it now over here in the project browser. So you can come over to the project browser and click on that little plus sign in front of sections and then double click on the view section. So I had to go back in the video and add this. Before we get started, let's go to the View tab and pick thin lines. See, if you use thin lines, you'll be able to see the lines are going to be thinner and easier to work with. And there's our section. Now, it doesn't look like much right now because we don't have any details. But if we want to see the details, down at the bottom left corner, well, you could do this in Plan also. You can change from coarse here to fine for the detail level. And when you do that, you'll be able to see a few more here layers of your project. Now we are creating here a detail of this, which is kind of up close. So we're going to click on this crop view, it's called, and use these little blue grips to kind of bring it down and a little bit closer to what we're going to be working with in this level 1 detail. Okay, at this point we want to zoom in and kind of create something that looks sort of like this, but not with all the details. Here we're going to take a look at bringing in drafting elements on top of this view. So if you're working with those main BIM elements, they're not, separated, and now you want to create a detail. We're going to draw on top of the view, basically. So I can go over to the Annotate tab, and I'll go ahead and minimize this so that we can take a look at this side by side. If you think about what we need, you can already see that there's this drywall, and here's the stud, the plywood, and airspace, and then this would be the brick, and here's the floor joist. So we're going to fix this. In the Annotate tab, you'll see that we have something called a detail line. This is where we can actually start to draw things, but you can also create a region, which is sort of like a hatch command in AutoCAD, where you can hatch in earth or concrete or whatever the hatch pattern is. Well, then we also have components, and part of that component would be the repeating detail component. Now we're going to load some of the other detail components, but I thought we'd work with what was already here as the default. I'll go ahead and pick repeating detail, and if you see the default is brick, you can load other ones, but I thought I'd stay with defaults here. And so if this is our floor joist, we could start at the bottom left corner, pull your mouse up, and you see how it's kind of repeating that brick detail. So I just picked here at the bottom left. I'm going to pull my mouse straight up, and then somewhere here I'm going to go ahead and click. And now I can use the modify button at the top left or the escape key to get out of that command. See, what it becomes is it becomes this kind of object that's on top of the view. And now we can use this insulation. I'll go ahead and click on the insulation here. By default, the insulation width is 3.5. We can place it and then change the width of it, but here we already know it's going to be approximately 5.5 inches, so I'm going to change the 3 to 5 and pick apply. And now when I come over here and click at the bottom here and pull my mouse up, I'm creating this kind of installation. I haven't put my stud there yet, so I'll be pushing this up, but at least here I'll get it in. So I clicked, I pull my mouse up, and I click, and then I can use my escape key or this modify button to get out of that. So let's go load some of these elements that we want to bring in. We can go over to insert and pick load family, and then here under English Imperial you should see detail items. One of the folders is called detail items. I know a couple of the students might not have some of these, so I'm trying to post these files. I'm hoping we can all have these files, these families to work with. So double click on detail items, and then you'll see that it's separated by the CSI different master spec divisions. So if we needed to have wood or plastic, we could double click here on this division 6, and now we want the wood framing, and we want a section right here, nominal cut lumber section. Double click on section. Now because we're working with here a 2x6 and maybe we'll have a 2x10 for the joists, I'm going to hold my control key down and select the 2x6 and the 2x10. You see the 2x6 is really 5.5 and the 2x10 is 9.25. So these two are highlighted. I'm going to go ahead and pick OK. Now that I have them loaded, I can go over to the Annotate tab. In the Annotate tab, I'm going to use Component, Detail Component. And right away you'll see on my pointer that I have the 2x6. And I can press and let go of my space bar in order to rotate it. This is something that we can do anytime that we bring in objects. And so I use my space bar to rotate it, and then I'm going to go ahead and pop it in there. We also have an opportunity, since we're in here, to drop down this list of details under properties and click on the 2x10. And again, we want to place it here. Because I don't know exactly where it's at, I'm just going to kind of line it up and click. I can always use my arrow keys to scooch it over or up where I need it. And then right click and cancel, or actually I pick the modify button or use the escape key. If I get close enough to this, what I can see here is that I need another line. I need several other lines here. So instead of creating lines, well, one of the lines that I'm going to create is the subfloor here. So let's go back and click on detail line, and I'll just click right here at the top, this 2x10, and pull my mouse over and click. All I did right here is I drew a line, and over here you'll see the drop down of all the different types of lines you can draw, and by default it's thin lines. Okay, let's go back and put the mud sill in here at the bottom so we can stretch the brick down. We can go to Annotate and pick Component, Detail Component, and then change your details here to 2x6 again. Here we are. I'm going to use the space bar to continually rotate it until I get to a point where I can just click right here in this corner. And there it is. Now, using my escape key or clicking the modify command, I'm going to go to create a region, a filled region. So the masking will kind of block out things that you don't want to see, and the filled region will fill it in with a pattern. And you can watch these little videos that kind of show you what's going to happen. So I'll go ahead and pick filled region. I want to create a thin rectangle for my plywood, so I'm going to go ahead and pick rectangle, and then I'll click here at the bottom to create a thin rectangle for my plywood. I'll go ahead and click up here. We can put a pattern inside the fill. We have a couple of different wood patterns we'll take a look at. We'll use wood 1. So drop this list down with their properties, click on wood 1 and pick the green check mark. Let's take a look. Now, if you click in space, you'll see that you can only see a couple little lines there. Well, right now we're looking at a detail that's at 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. That's pretty small. So at the bottom left corner of your screen here inside this view, we need to change our scale to something a little bit bigger, maybe 1 inch equals a foot. You see what happens when you do that. You can really start to see more detail because it's at a different scale. You can even see the dots already in place for the drywall. I'm going to go ahead and click on this wood 1 and change it to wood 2 and see what it looks like. So you can decide wood 1, wood 2, either one. I'll go back to wood 1. Okay, or leave it out. I just wanted to show you in this video that we have those choices. So now, because this is a filled region like a hatch, I can use these little arrows to drag it down so that it's in line with my mud sill or wherever you'd like to put it. Also here with the brick, we can do the same thing, just like that. We can use the arrow keys on our keyboard also to move it over once you've highlighted it. So at some point you might decide to make this floor invisible. Another tool that we can use is in the Modify tab. So let's go to the very top and click on Modify at the far right corner there at the end of the tabs. And you'll see that there's a tool called Line Work. Line Work, when you click on it, you'll have all these different categories. If you want to change the line work so that it looks like hidden lines, like for instance, when you have foundations in a elevation view, you might want the foundations to be with this kind of hidden line. Or in this case, we might want to make these lines invisible. So I'm going to go ahead and click on invisible. And now when I click on this line right here, see that? It takes it right out. It makes that line invisible. We might even take this top one out. But now, okay, I'm going to escape out of this because I made those lines invisible, and those are lines that are a part of the model. I can go back to Annotate and pick Detail Line and draw them in. So basically you're actually like drawing on top of the view. So when you think about it, you could just start drawing if you like, but at least the model gives you kind of a starting point, and if the model changes, then you can update the section. That's the idea. So I'm going to fill in the rest with just regular lines here, and I don't have a check mark in chain. When you don't have a check mark in chain, you're drawing individually each line. Click, click, and then it's done, right? So click, click. If I had a check mark in chain, I could have went click, 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 click to create all 3 of those lines. Okay, so there's probably more to it. Maybe I can just draw one more line here at the back of the brick because it came down a little bit further right there. Starting to look pretty good. Maybe I want to throw in some insulation here. Probably, yeah. I'll go ahead and click on insulation, and maybe here I'll change this to 9 1/4 because that's the real dimension of the wood joist, 9.25 inches. And I'll go ahead and click over here, pull my mouse across, and you see now I can put this bigger here insulation if you want. Alright, so if you zoom back a little bit, what you'll see is you have this box that represents the view, the crop of the view. So because this is a detail, we want to bring this a little bit closer so that we can kind of crop everything out and get this kind of tight drawing, maybe even a little bit closer, depending on what you want. And now we want to be able to bring it onto our sheet. Well, before we do this, we want to be able to turn this box off. In the properties here, we can take the check mark out of crop region visible, but keep it under crop view because that's what we're using to crop this view. So take the check mark out of crop region visible and pick apply, and now we have our detail. Let's set up a sheet that's 8.5 by 11. We can click on sheets at the bottom left corner. Now this is if you want to bring any view on a sheet. So we have all these different views. We're going to create a sheet, and then we're going to drag the views to the sheet. So right click with your pointer on sheets and pick new sheet. And then only this one is loaded. So we'll pick the load button. We'll have to go back here in the drop down to Imperial or English Imperial, and then scroll all the way down to title blocks. Double click on title blocks, and these are the title blocks that come with this software. There are several others online that you can download, or you can just create your own, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So here, let's pick 8.5 by 11. We can double click. It's loaded now. We'll pick OK. And now we have this sheet. So now we want to drag our view onto this sheet. So we're on the sheet. So don't double click. Just stay in the sheet and just highlight section 1. Hold your left mouse button down and drag it onto the sheet and let go. And then there it is. I'm going to go ahead and click. See, because I cropped the view, it's smaller, and I changed the scale of it too. If you don't change the scale, it might be even bigger than this sheet of paper. First thing you'll see is that when this view is selected, you'll have these little grips that you can use to change the size of this title underline. But when you click off of the view, you can click on that title so that you can select just the title, and then hold your left mouse button down and drag it over to wherever you want it. Right there. That's good. And there's the scale also. So you've got your detail. Let's modify the title block. We don't need this Autodesk right here. So we can double click on the title block. Anytime that you double click on an object, you want to be careful when you do that, because it could open up that object. And you'll see that the whole ribbon changes. You only have a few tabs here because you're not inside the project. You're really inside the family file, which is that individual file that has a title block. So if you're double clicking on a door, it'll put you right into the door family, or a window, any of those things. So we're inside this title block. We want to modify it so that we can save it and then use it for other projects. We don't really need this Autodesk logo, so highlight that and delete it. We'll go ahead and delete that website and this little line right here. We want to keep all this text here because these are text strings that are kind of like fields, so that when we use it, it'll be easier for us to modify. So maybe we want to put a logo in here like Wayne State or something. If you want to pick up something online, maybe it's your company logo. You want to scan your business card, whatever it is. I have already in my files a Wayne State logo. I went online, I found it, I right clicked, I picked save image as, and I saved it into my folder for this file. So since I'm here and I already have that image, I can go up to insert. I'm inside the title block, and I can go over to here, import image. So in insert, I'll pick import image. I need to find that Wayne State logo. I believe this is the one here that I found online. It could be whatever logo you want to use. And here it is. It's an image that I'm bringing into my title block. So keep this in mind in case you want to bring some kind of graphic into your title block. You can easily do that here. When I click, you can see that it's too big, so I can drag these little blue grips here to change the size and throw it right in place. Now, as I said, you can use your arrow keys a lot of times to move things around. So don't forget that you can do that for all of your different other objects too. Now, we don't want to start to change the client name and all of that yet, because this is still inside the sheet. These are fields that we're going to be using. So I'm just going to go ahead and load it into your project. It's going to ask you if you want to override the one that was already loaded. And so if you want to overload, if you want to replace it, you can. Let's go ahead and pick override and the existing version and its parameters. The other choice might be to swap it out. Well, I'll show you that in a minute. So I went ahead and picked to override it, and look here, there's the logo here, and the Autodesk is not there. Now, but another choice would be to select the title block and then come over here to this drop down and change your title block out. This was kind of easy to override it. So now you can click right on unnamed there, and maybe this wants to be masonry detail. And then over here, the owner might be you. If you want to just put your last name or your first name, you can. And then let's just make the project name maybe CMT 3080. Okay, there we go. So this is kind of a quick version of being able to place details on a view and then pull those views to the various sheets. You can see here that I'm starting to create sheets. Just keep in mind that you won't be able to pull a view onto more than one sheet, which makes sense because if you're creating a whole set of drawings, you really don't want to have the floor plan on 2 sheets, right? Or one specific section. So that's why sometimes we right click on the view and we pick duplicate view and then duplicate so that we can have kind of a copy of it in case we want to use it for something else, to illustrate something else. But we don't need to do that today, so I just wanted to talk to you about that. But look what happens when I rename here this view. So just click here once on level 1, and you can either right click and pick rename, or you can just click on it one more time and you get that edit box. And let's put our caps on and call this first floor plan, or first floor, for like the first floor level. And then I'll click in space and it'll ask me if I want to rename the corresponding view. I'll pick yes, and there it is. There's our first floor.